Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to WeatherBrains episode number 634. This is the pre-show, that wonderful, magical, amazing time where we all share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and occasionally we say very outrageous things. All right, who's got the echo going on here?
Me.
Great.
I don't know why.
Great.
I'll be quiet.
I feel like I'm talking to Apollo 13. Come in there.
I don't understand. My sound is completely turned down.
We got a delay coming in on Bill. We got a delay coming in on Bill's channel. We got you. We got you there. So, Brian,
sir,
I owe you one. Thank you for helping late this month.
Can I inquire as to what boondoggle you're going to be on?
It's a thing in Nashville. Our son,
fabulous,
graduates, and you have to kind of be there. So,
wow, that's pretty daggum important.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to be there. So we got to be there. So Brian is a great American, a fine American, and we have no idea what we're doing on. Hearing that echo again.
I got it fixed now.
Well, okay.
So that means we're going to be down on people that day, because I see I'm filling in for Charles over the weekend. So hope we don't have any severe weather.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I don't like the way things are looking for April, but what a me know. Knows nothing.
Yeah, but that day's March, so we should be okay.
We'll see. You know, I sweat these things out. In fact, last year, I lost one. I was supposed to go speak at Valparaiso University in Indiana.
Yep.
And I lost that one. Every spring, I typically do 2 talks, and they are all at risk.
Yeah.
Last year, I did one in Chicago. In fact, I think that event is just completed. I think they held it this weekend, the DuPage Advanced Severe Weather Seminar, which is great.
So, yeah.
But this year I'll be in Indianapolis, Indiana this weekend. And
close enough you can drive home.
Yeah, as old as I am, I've never been there, which is very surprising. So I love going to places where I've never visited before. So expect a big crowd there. And then I'll be at the University of Georgia.
Yeah.
Next week at the AMS chapter meeting, and that is on Thursday, the 22nd. I'll be hoping to see Dr. Marshall Shepard and Dr. John Knox, 2 great Americans.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're trying to get together before or after that so we can sit down like old men and gossip and be cranky and talk. So
there you go. Be a fly on the wall. Still no word on Wednesday as to time or place, or
no, I don't. I have no earthly idea. Wow, Jeff is on the line. Jeff, you are famous, man. I feel like we should be bowing down to greatness here.
Oh, don't start that, James. You're the greatness of Southeast United States. It goes around, my friend.
No, man. Let me tell you what. I mean, your Periscope lives are just you have become the Periscope platform. You're it. I mean, goodness. I mean, any severe weather, hurricane, I mean, you're there. It's awesome. It's riveting live stuff. It's great.
James, when it comes to social media, you're the king of social media, and it's always about trying something different on the platform. And I've got a lot to tell you about. It was an eye-opening experience for storm chasing, but it's also eye-opening experience as far as the social media side of things and the message to everybody. Good evening, Tim.
Good evening.
Good evening, Tim.
Had I known that Jeff Pietrowski was going to be here, I cannot follow that. I'm sorry. I just can't follow that.
Tim, you're so gracious, buddy.
You'll be with him.
I don't think Jeff knows the status that he has achieved in the weather world. I mean, he's just we're like nothing down here. So
James, come on,
bow down to great. No, I'm serious. I mean, so Tim, we were talking about you in Dallas a couple of weeks ago, and it was all good. It was all good.
Hi, Tim.
Well,
Tim's
look
frozen.
who's there.
Oh, there he is.
Brian.
I talk about you all the time, and it's always good.
Positive.
I always tell them about April 8th, 98, when you scared the crap out of me.
Yeah. Well, that was a fun chase. Yes.
Man, I feel like we ought to get going here. We got just so you guys will know, we have to wait until the bottom of the hour. This thing hits on television too. Most people listen, but some watch live, some watch later, and then we are on local television here.
Is there a link? Is there a link I can put out on Facebook here so
yes,
thousands of followers can?
The URL, it is live.bigbrainsmedia.com with no space. There's a live stream on that with a chat room, and that's where most people watch. Live.bigbrainsmedia.com. And there's probably a direct YouTube link I could give you, but I don't know what that is. And then it will be on YouTube forever, and the podcast, the audio will be there forever.
All right, I got it.
But most people
We've
listen.
Never
What happened?
one, have we, James?
Never. But what happened years ago? The boss here where I work, he actually liked the show, which was odd in itself. But he wanted to put this show on all of our digital weather channels we have, and so I said, well, Mike, this is an audio show. It's not a video show, and I said, I really don't want to get directors and switchers and all this stuff involved here. But that was about the time that Google came out with this Google Plus Hangout platform, which is what we're using here, which for those that don't know, the switching can be totally automated. I mean, you can manually switch this if you need to, but it just basically picks up on who's talking and it makes them full screen. And it really eliminates a lot of the hassle here. So we started using that. They took it on television, and we've been on television for, goodness, 6 years now. It's been a long time. So
Why don't we talk to Murphy about showing us in St. Louis, James?
I think we should do that. The weather guy up there is Steve Templeton.
Mm-hmm.
I think you met him when you went up there. Really nice guy, and Steve watches this. He listens. I think he doesn't watch.
We'll make him a permanent panelist, James.
I'm about to say we get him on here. It'd be great. St. Louis is a good weather market. So this NWA meeting here. Let's discuss.
Mm-hmm.
That is in August.
Yes, August starts on Saturday, August 25th.
25th, and it goes through the 29th. So, Brian, are you going to this thing? I mean,
goes through Thursday the 30th.
Because you see, I mean, if Charles works for me, then Megan and Charles will have TV covered, and me and you can go to this thing.
That would be great.
Brian has to go. He has a job.
We'll see if we can make all the. I did not get a chance to go. I've not been for like 2 years, so I need to go back.
All right, you have to come early on Saturday though, James, because you have to be there for the Weatherfest. You would be a major attraction.
No, bring in
Catch that.
Bring in Jeff
flight on
bring in Jeff and Tim. I mean, you got some heavy hitters on this show this week.
Tim doesn't know it yet, but Jeff does.
I've been quiet about it, but it's actually. I'm looking forward to St. Louis. It's going to be hot, really hot and steamy come August there.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most
hot and steamy come August. That's a
yes.
title. Now, Tim, I bet your ears were burning, man. We were talking about you for probably 30 minutes or an hour, and it was all good.
Oh, okay. When was this?
It was an eclectic group of people from academia, practitioners, grunts like me, researchers, social scientists, and we were just kind of going through the list of people that have really helped to shape things in a really good way. And your name was talked about often. So here's to you, sir.
All right, fantastic. Thank you.
I'm involved in this new entity called the Alliance for Integrated Approaches to Extreme Environmental Events. And as pinhead as that name sounds, I really think this could be something special. We've been needing something like this for a long time. And I think they got the right people at the right place at the right time. And we just have to, once we get a director hired, then I expect some good things, because we don't know each other that well. People across all these different disciplines and engineering. Certainly, Tim, you cross both the lines with, meteorology and engineering. So I'm very excited. It's just we got a lot of work to do, and I can't wait. All right, we're about 90 seconds out here, gents. Nate, are you home?
I am in the home office today. It was snowing outside my window just an hour ago.
That was great looking video this afternoon, Nate. I saw that.
I love, and it came. That was probably, I'd say, about the average intensity, but for a couple of hours right around dinner time, it was coming down like S+ for a little bit. It was good.
Yeah.
How much on the ground, Nate?
Not much. We were very wet and upper 30s to start the day today, 40s, 50s for this weekend. So it really took all it had just to give us a legitimate dusting. I'd say ½ inch, although in some spots maybe a little bit more than that. But it was pretty. It was one of those real photogenic snows. So the schools will delay tomorrow morning for a couple hours, and then we'll be in the 70s by this weekend. So it's March in North Carolina.
And Aubrey, we'll hold off asking you until the show starts here. So you're ground zero up there.
Boston's real ground zero, and they're going to get hammered
Again.
How about Cape Cod, man? That's where you want to be.
Right.
Be out there in the Cape. Woo, goodness. That's why I don't wear a toupee. That thing would blow halfway to Nova Scotia if I had one on up there.
Or to Bermuda.
Yeah. All right. We are welcome to our television friends that are joining us. It's 30 after the hour. It's the WeatherBrains pre-show. We're actually going to start on time, which is a shock. So I'm going to roll the recorders here, and we're going to get this thing on the road. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 634. WeatherBrains is the weekly show that is all about weather. This is for March 12th, 2018. We are now deep into meteorological spring, almost to the equinox here in a little bit. Good evening, and thanks for joining us this week. I see we got a few people out. We have, let's see, Kevin Selly sent one of these mysterious "I'm out" messages, and I'm very disappointed, by the way. Hang on here. Because look what I've got.
The hat. 25 years ago tonight.
Every time I wear this thing, I look like Freddy Krueger. I mean, it doesn't work for me. It really doesn't work for me. But this is the hat that Kevin wore
before. Briefly.
Hey, James.
Yes.
Apparently, Kim did not get an invitation, and I don't see her.
Well, I've invited Kim, but
I'll send her an email invite too. I
will invite her again. We got some breaking news for Kim. But no, Kevin Selly, when he was known as Kevin Collins, wore this hat during the storm of the century, the blizzard of 1993, and we've been posting the videos and having some fun today. But when Kevin left to go to Richmond, Virginia. His last day at the station, we had a party and, had the cake and all that, and everybody said goodbye. When I came out to the car, this was sitting on the steering wheel as Kevin's final me. So I said, I will be the keeper of the hats. So anytime we have a snow episode here, but I can't wear it like Kevin. I just cannot do it. But anyway, that's some fun. But Kevin is out. Rick Smith is doing a Skywarn class in Chickasha, Oklahoma.
Yep.
Kim, have you ever been to Chickasha, Oklahoma?
Oh, many times. Yeah, it's hard to live in this state, never go chasing, and not come upon Chickasha.
Yeah, I bet you some of our guests have been there too. But yeah, I guess all the tornadoes that come through Moore originate in Chickasha, right?
The Southwest, there are more. The main terror both was down in Chickasha on May 3rd, 99. And we followed past Moore and said a satellite tornado go just west of Chickasha and hit the airport and on its way up to Bridge Creek, and more that day.
Wow. Yeah, I'll sit back and watch the live streams from Oklahoma City, and you just kind of learn these places. But anyway, Rick is out doing a Skywarn class there. But look who's here. Nate, did you leave your heart in San Francisco?
No, I left my heart here and went to San Francisco for a few days. Had a nice West Coast tour a week or so ago, and it's amazing how, I diss California from time to time, but the people there are very friendly. I had a great visit at all three of our stations there in the West Coast, San Jose, the NBC Bay Area, NBC Los Angeles, and NBC San Diego. Some great people, and I'm looking forward to getting back there as soon as I possibly can.
So what do you do when you go out there? Let's say that I'm working at NBC in Los Angeles, and here comes Nate into the weather office. What can I expect from a visit from you?
To be fine.
I bring the scotch, so that's good. Scotch down in my belly. No, the visits so far have mostly been just introducing myself, getting to know the folks that work at our stations, both the meteorologists as well as the news directors, the technical folks, IT and engineering. And really, it's been the first 6 months of any job like this is just going around and getting to know everybody and getting a feel for what everybody's challenges are and what their strengths are, and just learning. So it's been more of a listening tour for me than anything else. We did do a little bit of training on our mobile radar truck called Storm Ranger. We relocated one of those to the Bay Area, so our station in the Bay Area there has one that they'll get to use whenever they want now. And so we had to do some initial training on that, both the operations and radar meteorology on it. And that's a fun little piece of technology that we're really just now learning how to use and getting the most out of it.
How heavily are they into geology out there with the quakes and everything?
That was sort of a running, I don't want to say joke, but that's sort of a running thing while we were out there. There were me and a couple of my colleagues were out for that. They are very in tune with it, and most of the folks there, I mean, much like, folks in Oklahoma, I mean, you look at folks in Oklahoma City are used to tornadoes. That's something they're comfortable, not as comfortable as you can be dealing with something like that. The folks on the West Coast have that same kind of comfort level with earthquakes, except, unlike tornadoes in the Midwest, you can't predict them. You're lucky with an earthquake if you're able, like the one that hit Mexico City a few weeks ago, where they had something like a minute and a half of early warning from where the first shaking took place until the earthquake actually made it in Oklahoma City or in Mexico City. But there's really not a whole lot of warning for them. So it's definitely one of those things you just prepare for as best you can and then respond when it happens.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's see. Brian Peters is back. Brian, you were, where were you last week? You were here, right? I lose track of who was here, who was not here.
I bowed out because we had so many people.
That's right. It was 50-cent beer night down at Hooters. But welcome back, Brian.
Gosh, I missed that. I was somewhere else at 40-cent beer night.
Yeah, and we're kind of dealing with some cooler air down here. But let's get Aubrey on here. Aubrey, did you get any snow up there?
We do, depending on your location.
I love your post today on Twitter.
So we had a little bit of overperformance in the county south of here, which is part of our GMA. So we had snow basically ranging from about 4 to around 7 inches. And here in Harrisonburg, we had just under 2. At my house, we had about 3. And then about 3 to 4 miles north of Harrisonburg, it flurried, and that was it. And anywhere north of that, not a flake. So it really was about a 6-inch difference in a span of about 30 miles. So 6 inches and 30 miles.
So how'd your forecast work out?
Other than overperforming in Augusta County busting, it actually worked out pretty good. The timing was right on. We said the Northern Valley probably wasn't going to get anything at all. Parts of our county here outside of Harrisonburg did see a few on the higher side, but the heaviest, I mean, we had the heaviest part nailed out, just not the amount. So
never easy. Nobody said this job would be easy.
No, and the models were all over the place with this system. Even on Saturday, I mean, it was just we've had a lot of mixed precip events this winter, obviously, which are also challenging, but this one was just, I'm glad it panned out for what it was compared to how late the models started kind of coming together with everything.
This has been the winter of overperforming winter storms in the Southeast. It seems like,
brother.
It seems like all of them from the beginning to the end have overperformed. This one outdid itself, especially just to the west of here in the Triad. It was sort of, the Weather Service initially was, we'll get a dusting and it's this sort of thing. And by the time it started to precipitate this morning, we were looking at a winter weather advisory with sort of cautiously, maybe hopefully not having to go to a winter storm warning type stuff, because once it starts and it starts a little early, you start to freak out a little bit. So I won't complain. It's nice and I don't have to drive in it, thankfully. But I do not miss being on the front lines of a TV station in this market today. That's for sure.
Right.
And down here, when these nor'easters crank up, we've had odd things like little rain shower bands knocking down trees all over the place and creating chaos. We had one morning with how many tornadoes, Brian? It went undetected. Six.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Six tornadoes, all with no warning. And we have been struggling with the POD down here. With this,
and I will mention that they were all EF0s. I mean, so
right, and understand that they're not big ones, but yet they're tornadoes. But
yes.
Kim Kloko is in the lovely community of Norman, Oklahoma. Kim, any news you want to share with the group here?
We need the breaking news story. Yeah, there you go.
We interrupt this program for a CBS Radio Net Alert Bulletin.
Well, thank you for all of the fanfare. Yeah, I have some news. Love to share with everybody. Just got to share with the WeatherBrains crew last week. We'll be adding one to the WeatherBrains crew soon. One very little one, because I am pregnant.
Yay!
Thank you.
Wow.
It's pretty exciting. Yeah.
You've been glowing. We knew something was up.
Glowing when I'm here, and I have to apologize to the audience. This is why I'm not here sometimes. It's been sort of a rough go the past 2 months, but hoping that, for that mythical second trimester bliss that, some people talk about happening.
I don't envy you, man.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, how are you guys doing over there, Nate?
We've got number 4 on the way. We found out last week that it will be yet another girl added to the clan here in August.
Congratulations.
This is
Congratulations.
Wow.
And my wife, God bless her, we thought we had gotten past. You were just into the second trimester now, and it's supposedly the morning sickness. For her, it's more evening sickness.
And me too.
And everything was going great, and things seemed to be sort of ebbing out and easing out. And then Saturday night, we're watching a movie with the girls, and she excuses herself and goes upstairs, and I pretty much didn't see her for the next 36 hours. It was just she's just knocked out. So God bless her. Good luck.
Thank you. Goodness.
To quote Leslie Nielsen, good luck. We're all counting on you.
Yeah.
Well, tell your wife I think she is amazing. I've been just thinking, how does anyone go through this with other young children? Like, at least I can just lay on the couch and I make it through the workday for the most part. Okay. Yeah. And then I get home and I am not awesome. And so my lovely husband, this is our marriage is in our first beautiful year, and this is how he gets to see me. But man, I've been just I've been very fortunate. He's very supportive. I don't know what I'd do if I had little kids who needed me. And you have 3 others. Just tell her that I think she's a rock star.
Well, she's certainly my rock star, and my rock on top of that. But you deal. And the funny thing, and you'll joke about this. In a year or 2 or 3 or 4, if you wind up having more, you'll look back at last month and you'll go, what did I do with all of my free time? And the parents on the panel, you know what I'm talking about. You look at all your single friends, you're like, you guys have no idea.
We've been down that road. All right, Bill Murray, bring in our guest. We got some important people waiting here.
Yeah, James, I've got a question for Nate before we get away. Nate, you spent
go
some
ahead,
time
caller.
on the West Coast, and How do the stations in the Bay Area and Los Angeles deal with all the microclimates? I mean, I watched Fritz Coleman when we were there for the NWA last year, and he had like 21 forecasts at the end of the show.
Yeah,
Fritz 21 7-day forecasts.
Yeah, a 7-day forecast or 5 or so. It's so many you lose count. And when you get 2.5 minutes to do a full weathercast, you're spending half of that just looping through 7 days. They do them 2 at a time most of the time. In the Bay Area, it's the same thing. It's not quite as bad up in the Bay Area, Northern California, but you're still having to do multiple 7-day forecasts. As a matter of fact, our Bay Area station, that's their brand for weather, is microclimate weather. And it's, just paying attention to these individual microclimates, being aware that the weather in the North Bay can be very different from, East Bay, can be very different from the city, can be very different from the Valley, from Silicon Valley. So just being aware of all those changes. And that's where, having, to be a little corporate for a second, having this mobile radar truck that we've got, it doesn't rain often in California, certainly not meaningful rain, but when it does, it's a big deal. And being able to move the truck around to sort of focus on where the rain is actually falling and where it's the biggest and the heaviest is something that we're really excited to be able to play with over the next the coming months and years.
Well, that's outstanding. Well, we do have some legends of chasing tonight. We've got Jeff Piotrowski, who works for Barron and is one of the great storm chasers. Jeff, thank you for joining us tonight. Are you in Owasso? Is that where you are?
Yeah, I'm at home tonight in Owasso. Been traveling the whole year, but I'm home the next couple of days.
Well, that's great. Well, it's good to have you on the show tonight.
Thanks
for joining us. Thank you. And we've got the great Tim Marshall from Hague Engineering. Tim is a meteorologist and engineer, as James alluded to earlier. Tim, where are you coming to us from tonight?
I'm in Naples, Florida.
So you're there to see spring training baseball, right? That's why you're down there?
Sure. Well, actually, we had a storm down here called Hurricane Irma.
Yeah, we've heard of it.
Last year, yes. And Irma has generated a lot of work for us. And we're in the failure and damage consulting business. So here I am evaluating damage.
So what do most of the cases generally involve, Tim, that you're having to decide about?
Right now, it looks like mostly roof inspections, concrete tiles in particular. A lot of these tile roofs were not installed correctly to begin with, and the hurricane came in and blew some tile off. And a lot of those tiles are not made anymore. So we have to find out where we can get those tiles. And it tends to be somewhat of a debate and controversial at times. So we're out there every day and we're looking at roofs, rain or shine. It was raining off and on today.
So the frontal system has made it to you, huh?
Yeah, it passed us this afternoon. We have northwest winds now, and it's actually getting quite chilly. It's going to be like 44 tonight, so it's going to be pretty cold for South Florida.
Yeah. Yes. So much for deep into meteorological spring, as James said. We've got freezing temperatures here in Alabama a couple of nights this week, so it's a rude awakening today across the southeastern United States. So Tim, tell us when you got into chasing. When was your first storm chase?
I started chasing dark clouds back in 1976, and that's when I just went out. I didn't know what I was doing. I just went out there. Oh, that's a nice rain shaft. And this was in northern Illinois. That's where I went to school up there initially. And, oh, by the way, Kim, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Yeah, I saw the news today. So that was fantastic. And so, but really, I was always interested in storms. When I was a little kid, my town got hit with an F4 tornado, and I had no clue what this thing was that came out of the sky and did all this massive destruction. And I asked my parents, what is this tornado thing? And they said, oh, it comes from dark clouds. So I was looking for dark clouds and seeing if I could find tornadoes, and I wasn't very successful in it, but I got scared for a couple months afterwards every time I saw a dark cloud. But I really didn't know much about tornadoes at all, and I was only 10. So I wrote to the local TV meteorologist. And James, I wanted to tell you how important TV meteorologists are. That they were my idols when I was growing up as a kid, and the fact that they wrote back to me was phenomenal. They sent me literature from the National Weather Service and other places. So I just got to say that, you have a tremendous opportunity here when somebody comes up to you and is interested in weather, and you can inspire them right there on the spot. They see you every day. You may not see them, but they see you. And Harry Volkman was my idol. He was a great friend that I knew all my life after that, 10-year-old, and he sent me some information. He had worked at both WGN and NBC, and he just took time out to say hi. That's all he had to do. And I was very much encouraged with that. And occasionally I would call in my rain gauge report, and he would mention my name on the air, and that was phenomenal. I really enjoyed that. And my parents thought it was pretty cool too. So they asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I told them a barometer. So I got a barometer for Christmas. Yay! How many kids ask for a barometer for Christmas? And I took daily weather records, which I still have, by the way, the engineer in me. I still have the daily weather records. Go on back, in the 60s. So yeah, I was always interested in weather. I never had a choice. I knew what I wanted to do. But I did want to know more about tornadoes, and was very fortunate that the timing was pretty good. That Dr. Ted Fujita worked at the University of Chicago in 1965. You may remember the Palm Sunday outbreak. Then there April 21, 1967, Illinois outbreak. So these tornado outbreaks were occurring in the upper Midwest, and Dr. Fujita was going out and surveying them, and I was all over it. And I just was following him and wrote to him, and he sent me all these beautiful color maps of tornado tracks, which I posted on my wall. I mean, he did some phenomenal cartography work. So, I mean, I was in heaven. I had 3 TV meteorologists on the major stations that were sending me things, and I had Dr. Ted Fujita sending me things. And I went to the library and I read every book I could on tornadoes. Of course, they were very elementary books, if you know what I mean. Not very. I didn't know about the American Meteorology Society when I was 10 years old, okay, or any of the other journals. But I just was interested and just followed my passion and went ahead and studied, and was able to go to Northern Illinois University, get a degree there in meteorology, went on to Texas Tech, got a master's degree in atmospheric science, and then I got brainwashed. 1980. Jimmy Carter was president, put a freeze on hiring with the National Weather Service, and I really wanted to work for the National Weather Service. That was my goal, because I love weather. I wanted to live it every day, and they live it every day. And I was denied that. Freeze. I just could not get a job. So what am I going to do? I'm unemployed with a master's degree in meteorology, okay? What am I going to do? Well, then June 3rd, 1980 happened. A day that changed my life. It was a massive tornado outbreak right around Grand Island. Tornadoes doing weird things like going in loops, and anticyclonic tornadoes. Tornadoes going all different shapes and sizes. And the civil engineering department called over to the atmospheric science department and said, hey, you want to go up and survey some damage with us? And by the way, Dr. Fujita is going to be up there. I said, yeah. So when I was up there, the engineer said, Tim, there's not much difference between meteorology and engineering. They both contain math and physics. And if you really are interested in damage surveying, you got to know how these houses are put together and these buildings are put together first. So why don't you become an engineer? And I had to think about that, because I'm changing course now after a master's degree in meteorology. But they convinced me it would be worth my while in the long run to pursue the engineering end of things, and that I can always do failure and damage consulting work. So I went for it, but I had to go back with a bunch of freshmen and sit and level with them. You know how demeaning it is with a master's degree to go back with a bunch of freshmen again and level. They call it leveling. I call it demeaning. But I went ahead and unleveled, got a master's degree in civil engineering, and went to the Yellow Pages, picked out Hague Engineering Company because they did failure and damage consulting work. Called them, said, "You need to hire me." They hired me, and I've been there ever since.
Wow. So that's going on 40 years nearly, huh, Tim?
Yeah,
30,
absolutely.
38 years with those guys. That's amazing. So, and still loving it, still living the dream.
Yeah, I've retired 5 times already. I can't seem to get, whenever I decide to retire, then a hurricane hits the United States and it's back to work again. No, we're always busy. It's just hurricanes are our Christmas. They are the disasters which make our year. So we come down here, we set up shop. I've been down here in Naples and Miami, down on the Texas coast from Hurricane Harvey just last week. So I don't really get home very much. I kind of commute between the 2 disaster areas, and I'll be here for a couple more months, but I want to take some time off to go storm chasing this spring. That's really what I want to do.
So Jeff, your history too is interesting. Talk about how you got into storm chasing and how you got started.
It's not as great as Tim's, I can tell you for sure.
It's gonna be hard to beat that story.
That's an unbelievable story. He's fantastic. Mine started when I was 14 years old, and Tim will remember this event, June 8th, 1974. Tornado started in Oklahoma City somewhere around noon on a triple point, and big old upper trough came out negatively tilted in central Oklahoma in a draw line. And I remember listening to KRMG 740 AM in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was in my room. It was warm and windy outside. It was about 80 degrees and ripping south winds. And I remember they said there was severe thunderstorm warning, tornado warnings coming out of Oklahoma City, and there was damage. So that caught my attention. So I shut the door and cranked up the radio. And every time back in the 70s when the warnings would go off, you'd hear the teletype bell go off in the newsroom. And the guy goes, "This just in from the Highway Patrol. Large destructive tornado tracking up I-44 coming out of Oklahoma City and it's heading toward Chandler and then Bristow and all these towns. Drumright were getting hit." So I'm doing this little Road McNally map with the measurements, 30 miles is an inch, and I'm putting a dot down, literally, and I'm drawing it on a ruler. And after about an hour, when the second town got hit, it was probably about 1:30, 2 o'clock. And I went and told my mom, I said, "We're going to have tornadoes around 5 o'clock. And she looked outside. And it was beautiful. It was sunny. When it was blowing, she says, "Go out and play. What are you doing? You're 14 years old. Go ride your bike, 10 speed. It's going to be a beautiful day." And I said, "Oh, no, we're going to have tornadoes at 5 o'clock. And I was convinced. I went back in the room, shut the door, continued to plot, and continue to watch. And about 4 o'clock, I'm watching the Sierra starting to blow up over Tulsa out of the southwest. And the next town, and now it's about 20 miles from Tulsa. And here it comes. And I remember looking out our broken arrow window, sliding glass window, looking to the west toward Oral Roberts in South Tulsa. And about 5:15, you could see a big 1/4-mile wide wedge tornado coming into South Tulsa. And I remember Mom she goes, "Let's go to shelter. Here comes the tornado." And I remember that moment. Over the next, a couple hours, we had baseball-sized hail, multiple tornado warnings, tornadoes near the house. And we went to church and went to the basement. And I remember all the damage afterwards and everything. And I can tell you, the next time I told my mom a tornado's coming, she believed me. So June 8th, 74 was a big impression on me. 2 years later, we'll go forward here. I was out delivering, used to engrave tombstones after school. It's an unusual job. It's close by. So I was out on Memorial Day weekend. And Tim knows about Memorial Day weekend. There's always severe weather and tornadoes in Oklahoma. And we had a prolific severe thunderstorms in Tulsa with intense flash flooding, and was coming back in from working that day in a 2-ton truck. And I ended up getting caught in a flash flood with my boss and in a 2-ton truck. We went over Mingo Creek at 31st there, and the truck got inundated with water, went above the hood. And I remember rolling down the windows, the water poured into the cab. And it was my boss, his 5-year-old son, and I'm probably 16, 15 at the time. And I remember getting out on top of the truck, and a railroad tie from the nearby park had washed down the creek and had knocked my boss and his 5-year-old son into the creek. It was a raging river at that point. And I was a skinny kid at that age, good swimmer, really good swimmer when I was young. And I always rode bike. So I swam really quick over to the fence, held on. And what I didn't know at the time is the editor of the Tulsa World Tribune lived at that house, and he was watching this all unfold from his upstairs balcony. and he called 911 fire department. Engine 27 came out. They got flooded out, and the engine called engine 30 came out, and they threw a rope across the creek. And I remember they brought me back across the creek, saved my life. Stayed on the fire truck, and I remember furniture floating by, tires, money. And I remember at one time a guy got bit by a snake in the water moccasin, because the creeks were all flooded. So that made a huge impression on me when I'm 15 years old. So those two events back to back, I'm like, boy, weather's really amazing. So that, and then you had at that time, I had Gary Shore in Tulsa. I had Mike Morgan in Tulsa. So I had some great mentors at the time, Travis Meyer. So I had a lot of great local meteorologists. I also belonged to the Broken Arrow Explorers Club, which was fire department related. And they took us to the National Weather Service in Tulsa when I was 14, 15 years old. And I loved the weather service. I loved the WR57. And I used to ride my 10-speed from Broken Arrow all the way to the Tulsa Weather Service, which is about 15 miles one way. At 15 years old, that was a trip. And but I loved going in there and watching the VIP level 6s and watching the radar and putting the Velum up on the map and watch storms. So at a very early age, I was hooked on weather and extremes. And just one thing led to another over the years. I just always loved weather and built houses in Tulsa 15 years. And boy, if you're in construction, you got to understand weather, because it affects you every day. And so just one thing led to another. So that's my love for weather. And it's been an amazing 35, 40 years of storm chasing. And wouldn't change it for anything.
Jeff Petrowski was almost washed away with flash flood. Things I
never
didn't
heard
know.
that.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of new stuff.
And you said a term I haven't heard in a long time there, Jeff. VIP level.
Yep.
VIP level.
VIP level.
That term hasn't
VIP level
crossed.
Yes. Remember
That
those
term
field
hasn't
days?
crossed
I
my
told
mind
us
in
to
a
bring
long
lot of
time.
technology now let's talk about, now Tim will know this one. Now this gets into great nostalgia here. Let me show you this little deal. If everybody remembers this is what we used to use out storm chasing, little phone coupler. And we would take this with a Mac computer, true story, and I would take that, if it stopped at OU, and we'd get some data or satellite, and you used to take the satellite about once an hour, and we'd take the maps and do this, try to figure out if there's tower and queue on the draw line before we went out to Southwest Oklahoma. We'd stop at the Texaco at Altus. It had a really long phone cord. It was probably 10 foot long. And you had a CompUSA account or Earthlink account, and you'd put in the 800 number. And you got memory. And we put on that. And so I dialed the number up, and you just connect. And this was like 300 baud. It was really slow. And it come down, and all you wanted was a local OBS, and it would come down one line at a time, really slow. You just download Texas Panhandle or Oklahoma, and you log off, because it costs you so many cents per minute. You have to keep putting quarters in the 800 deal of iPhone to stay connected. So you get off, and then you would do a hand analysis and just draw on a hand map and look at what happened before we left the map room and what it was currently. And then you could see if the winds have backed or veered along the draw line. And if one of the OBS reported tower and queue or CB overshooting top, he was like, okay, that's how you knew where to go. And that was basically how we chased for the first 10, 15 years. It didn't have the privilege of having cell phone and mobile devices out in the field. It was basically line of sight was gut and just pattern recognition. And that's how we knew where to go in the early days.
So that's missing for a lot of our younger folks. If those experiences, how much are they missing out by not having had that?
I think a bunch. I think if you take all the technology away from everybody, let them look at maps in the morning, make a forecast, and go with what you see visually. The cirrus coming in, diaffluence, as far as the air spreading out in the diaffluence. Are the winds backing? Are they veering? Do you have tower and queue? Watching the clouds in the afternoon, are they rising or are they getting suppressed? Well, maybe the cap's coming in. And it's reading that sky is going to tell you a lot of clues without looking at data where to go. And a lot of times the clouds, the atmosphere will give you keys what it's going to happen before it happens if you know what to look for.
So Tim, add to what Jeff just said. Talk about some of those early chasing days and some of those signs and how you made your early target forecasts.
I used to go to the National Weather Service out in Lubbock, Texas, and sit in front of those teletype machines, those clackety-clack machines, and hand plot the weather maps. So, and I'd read the SAOs, the surface weather obs, and see what the temperature and dew points are and wind speed and wind direction, and plot the altimeter pressure. And by doing that, you get to feel what's going on. so that the next hour, when I'm hand plotting again, I'm thinking, oh, the dew point just went up 4 degrees this past hour in Childress. Now, I remember that from plotting the prior hour. So that's what I mean. You get to feel the data. Today, when you just look at these maps and you're looking at so much information, you don't really remember these details, the fine details. And the fine details end up being quite important. So this actually is quite the challenge. I mean, what could chasers do today to think about turning their cell phone off, turning their computers off, and all they have is an AM radio and line of sight, like Jeff was saying. That's it. That's what we had to go by. And, a storm could be 200 miles away and tornadoing, and I would not even know it until that evening when I see some video on the farmer that shot from a news station. That was my source of information. So it was quite primitive compared to today's standards. And by the way, I'm going to add one more thing, Jeff. For the first 9 years of my storm chasing, I did not have a thing called air conditioning in my car.
I've had a few of those myself.
First 9 years, unair-conditioned Camaro, 2-door, and when you had those West Texas dust storms, you had a choice to make. Either you burn up in the vehicle or you get true grit.
Lots of it.
Had to make a choice.
So, Tim, what were some of your most memorable chases?
Well, all the chases that you're on, you can't pick a good tornado because it'd be like picking your best child. They're all your kids, and you've grown to love them, even the big ugly ones, small skinny ones. And it's just really nice. I love it. Like there was an October 4, 98. Jeff, you remember this? Watonga, Oklahoma. It was probably the best chase that I've had because I could set up the camera on a tripod, and for 20 minutes, as the tornado arced around me in perfect light, I just sat there and moved the tripod just a little bit, and the tornado was going through groves of trees, plucking them out by the root balls, and they were parasailing around the vortex. And then near the rope stage, the sun comes out and illuminates the bottom of the tornado, a brilliant orange. And what can I say? You can't do any better than that, really. That's just the ultimate to me in the chase. It's just I didn't have to move once in chasing this tornado. For 20 minutes, just sat there in the same place.
So that's it. That's your favorite chase of all time, I guess, Tim.
It's certainly one of them. I mean, I've had some very scary moments. I've been with the Vortex and Rotate and Twirl projects with Josh and Karen. We've been in front of big, nasty tornadoes. We've been stuck on the Kansas slime roads and have gone off into the bar ditch. That wasn't what we wanted to do. But here we were between two tornadoes and we're stuck in a bar ditch. And, this is kind of unnerving. And I'm with a 4-wheel drive vehicle, and you put your foot on the gas and you go sideways. So it's like, well, 4-wheel drive doesn't mean anything when you got Kansas slime in there. And I just had to gun it through the field and leave my own furrow path. But I got out of it and was able to resume the chase. And that's what you love about it. After being stuck, you go back and do it again.
Jeff, you got some harrowing stories. One that you shared with me a long time ago about a car conking out on you and having to take shelter in a house that got struck. Talk about some of those more harrowing experiences.
Oh my gosh. I said that was Oregon, Nebraska. Yeah, me and Brian Storrs was chasing. I just had my truck. It's very important to keep your vehicle up to date, maintain. And they changed the U-joints, and the mechanic had left out one of the pins out of one of the sides of the U-joint, the little springs that keeps the U-joint in place. And Brian and I were on a triple point up near Nebraska, and it Saturday afternoon, and a tornado developed to our northwest, and we're going county road and doing about 45 miles an hour. And I hear this clang, bang, this awful noise underneath the car. Me and Brian looked at each other. I said, that doesn't sound good. And the yoke had backed out of the transmission and it exploded. And I had metal parts falling on the highway behind me. And so here I am, broke down. Here comes the tornadic storm up to my northwest, moving southeast. So my first call is 911. Tell them tornado's on the ground. This is my location. By the way, we're broke down. If we don't make it, this is who I am. And about that time, Kathy calls me. And she says, hey, what's going on? You and Brian haven't even like it. I said, Kathy, the car just broke down. Tornado's heading our direction. We're going to get hit. And she goes, oh, quit kidding me. And I said, no, I'm not kidding you. I'm serious. This is what's happening. So anyway, Brian, at the last second, he says, hey, Jeff, there's a farmer's field house we can run to up in the field here. And the only problem was about a quarter mile toward the direction of the tornado because you think we can make it. And I said, if we run like crazy, we can make it. And we got out of the car, started heading west uphill, and they started heading the driveway. And there's golf ball to baseball hill flying, zinging through the air. You could hear it cutting through the air. You could hear the roar of the tornado coming. And as I made it up to the farmhouse, which was a full-out run, it was an intense run. Got to the front door. The lady saw that our vehicles broke down. She was by herself. She was elderly, hard to hear. And she had her storm door locked. And she says, what do you need? And I said, do you have a basement? And she says, why do you ask? And I said, because a tornado's in your cornfield and it's going to hit the house. We got to go to the basement now. And she says, what tornado? And about that time, the tornado was probably closing about 100 yards from the house, and the west windows of her house are starting to implode in with debris coming through the west walls, like just torpedoes, bum, 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 bum. And she hears the glass breaking, and she looks at me. Her eyes get real big. She unlocks the door. She takes off running. About that time, Brian's coming up the steps. He falls and hits the front door, and as we get inside, we both run to the basement. And about that time in the basement, we get to the lower level, and the tornado, the house, the roof's coming off, and we get under the stairs, and it's herring for about 45 seconds as the tornado hits the house, destroys the house, and we're in the basement waiting for the tornado to end. So it was quite scary, to put it mildly. So the crazy thing was, the tornado goes by, we get out of the stairs, and we go slowly up the stairs, and as we open the door, I could look up and I could see the moon, see the tornado still in the cornfield leaving the house. And the north wall of our house was still standing. Everything else was gone, including the grain silos and the tractors. And I could smell fuel and propane. And so I said, hey, I think your phone, let's pick up your phone. I picked up the phone, still had a dial tone. I called the 911, same operator answered before. And I told him where I was at. And he says, well, I got good news, partner. He goes, we've got the cavalry coming. And if you think about Smokey and the Band, it's out in the middle of nowhere, on top of a crest of a hill. And for 360 degrees, the power was out for 10-mile radius. You couldn't see anything. I just saw lights coming from every direction. And they sent a lot of help. And they got there. And the local dealership brought a truck to me and unloaded our vehicle and told us to go get a rest, that we've had a rough night, and it was quite the night too. I had to excellent took a shower that night. I had corn in my hair from the corn blowing as we ran up to the house. It was not fun.
Show title: I had corn in my hair.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So Jeff, did the truck make it? Would you have been safe where you were? Or
no, would not have been safe for a while. One of the grain silos, a lot of the sheet metal impaled the front of the vehicle, the windshield, and the front of the truck. So no, the truck would have been injured or killed if I'd stayed in the vehicle. Even though the truck was literally probably about 200 yards south of the core of the vortex. The house was in just about 50 yards, 20 yards from the core of the vortex's F4, and but it blew away everything else. I don't want to go through that again. That was super scary, very scary.
This is why every time the first flight after any sort of airplane maintenance is always tricky, because you want a nice easy flight somewhere just in case something didn't get put back together the way it needed to be.
Yep.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But what's so neat about that? I was going to say, what's neat about that story is it sounds like, did you save that woman? Was she just completely unaware?
It was mutual. There's a lot more stuff I can't tell you about, but it was mutual. We saved each other. Honest, that's the truth. We saved each other.
That's incredible. It's almost like you were supposed to be there.
It was just by grace of God, we both, all three, made it out alive, and we were very lucky in that particular situation. Yep. So I'm going to jump to something else, Bill, that I don't think most of you guests don't even know this. And this is a pretty interesting story. It has to do with the early days of chasing. We all have cell phones now, Let me tell you, do you know how the first cell phone technology, and Tim, this is right in your back door up there with Cellular One in Chicago, the first cell phone technology. One of the things we did back in the early 90s when cell phones technology came out, this little box right here, this is called a Sony PVT 115. And all it was a steel store. And this was back in the early 90s. I ran across this at a military trade show. And Motorola had just came out with a little black box. They call it the black box. And it gave you a dial tone. And the old 3-watt bag phones, you remember those? We used to carry those out there. And you basically plug the cell phone into this little steel store here with a camera attached to it. And you could push a button and you could actually grab a single image and then transfer it over the cell phone technology back to the TV station, for example. It'd come down one line at a time. And as it did, you could actually see that technology from out in the field anywhere in the world. But that was like back in 1994. That's before we had cell phones with pictures and cameras, but that was the first technology we used in the field in Oklahoma for storm chasing, send pictures to TV stations while we're out chasing. And that revolutionized storm chasing in Oklahoma and what we were able to do. Because seeing the pictures, minutes after the disaster is changed the way people perceive severe weather and took weather more seriously after that.
Hey, let me ask you guys a question. Our friend Chuck Doswell was at Tessa. Jeff, were you there last weekend?
No, I was not. Tim was, I think.
So, Tim, what are your thoughts on his talk? And again, for those that are not watching, I'll just kind of read off this one of his slides. Storm chasing is a hobby. Unlike spotting, chasing is inherently selfish. Chasers aren't out there to save lives. Chasers aren't out there to help rural economies. Chasers decide for themselves what their motivation for chasing is and how to fulfill it. Trying to convert storm chasing into a job that can support you will cause you to take greater risks and can lead to frustration and jealousy and can put you in harm's way. Just your thoughts on his talk since you were there, Tim.
Yeah, well, storm chasing for me is a hobby. I don't make it a living. I simply enjoy watching the extremes of nature. I don't want to be in a tornado. I do have a scientific end of things. I joined Josh and Karen in the spring when they have funding to put instrumented probes in the paths of tornadoes so that they can understand what the flow field is down low, because their Doppler on wheels can only tell what the flow is higher up, like 100, 200, 300 meters. So they need to do some correlation between what happens 200 meters above them and what happens near the ground. And they simply don't have enough data points for that. We only have a couple of times where we've had tornadoes hit our pods. So it's important to continue doing that kind of research. But when I'm not with them, certainly it's a hobby for me. I enjoy taking video and pictures of it. I used to years ago sell it for quite a bit of money. Up to $90 a second, but now you couldn't get $6 a second. So it's not worth it if you wanted to do it that way. And plus, there are so many people that are out there now, and everybody's got a cell phone. So to me, it's not worth trying to make a living out of it. You go broke pretty quickly trying to do that. And those people who can make some living on it do other things like maybe give tours, or they're in more than just tornadoes. They're in nature photography, so photographers. So they branch on out. But for me, yeah, a lot of what Chuck says is true. It's a hobby. I'm not out there to save lives. It's really more to do with research and advancing my knowledge on tornadoes. And I do write papers about what we do and publish those papers. So there is some scientific value, but not everybody does this. Most people are out there to see what happens and take videos and take pictures of it. So it's nice also to report that in. Jeff does a lot on reporting, and that's important too, because a lot of these tornadoes are rain wrapped. People don't even know they're there, and to get that word out really helps out. So, there's that end of things. Spotters, they're out there usually with their local community, and they're out there reporting in what they see. They're not out there to get good video necessarily, but that just maybe is a secondary thing for them. So yeah, what Chuck said was a lot of truth there, and I agree with it. he comes down hard on that. And especially when you hear some of this audio, you see these chasers go out there and they're shooting a tornado and they're screaming up and down, yippee, look, fantastic. All these chasers need to go see this 1 hour program. Jeff, you probably seen this, the May 3rd, 99 program with that paramedic who's first arriving on the scene
at Bridge Creek.
And he has to make those choices of who lives and who dies. And that really was sobering to me to see that, because the paramedic, and even though the person's alive, he just says, sorry, this person's too far gone. They're going to die. I can't help them. I have to take my time and save this person over here with less injuries. And he was by himself for a while before other people came in. So to make that call, I just can't imagine making that kind of call. You want to help everybody, but he couldn't. And he had to make that call, who lives and who dies. And it's a very powerful documentary, and I think all chasers need to see it. I think it would give them a little better perspective on this. This isn't all fun and games. It hurts people, it kills people, it maims people.
And what say you, Jeff?
Say again?
Now, what say you on what Chuck had to say?
No, I think he's right. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that he puts in there. I think at the end of the day, I think you have to, if you're out storm chasing, everybody's out for a different reason, as Tim talked about on the scientific side. And I like to be able to take model data, look at a forecast, go to a target like a needle in a haystack, looking for a particular county or city, go to that target and wait for the storm to develop and see if your forecasting skills are good. I enjoy that. I think and on top of that, I think it's a duty. I sleep well at night knowing if I'm out in the field chasing, if you take the time, whether it be 911, tell the local sheriff. A lot of times we'll have highway patrol. The sheriff will come beside us, the local fire department. A lot of times they don't know as much as we know, but if you just take that 15 or 30 seconds, just like I did in Joplin, take that 10 or 15 seconds to tell the officer, this is what's happening. This is what's getting ready to happen in your city. This is what is coming, whether it be baseball, softball, side sale. We have data. We have dual pole radars now. We have data that tells us right in our phone, right in our information in real time, what is going to happen before it happens. And if you can help somebody understand that threat and analysis and convey that message, that urgency, I do that. That's this way. I've been that way my whole life. 40 plus years I've done this. So everybody chases a different way. I've always taken the time to stop and help my fellow neighbor, and I enjoy helping people. And a lot of times when you stop out in the rural areas, the people are wonderful. They're fantastic. And sometimes they'll even invite you in for a steak dinner too.
Yeah.
It's true.
That's true.
Yeah, it's very true. I'd love to chime in on this too. It's really interesting. I actually almost shared the essay that Chuck wrote that this tirade sort of comes from. But I have another Chuck essay coming in my pick of the week. But this is a really good one. He's definitely poking a bear here, and it's going to touch, a lot of nerves with a lot of people. I will say I think that there's some value for folks in chasing, at least some limited chasing activities, if not something you're doing for your career. I know for me, as even a social scientist who studies the behaviors of folks who are in danger of being hit by a tornado or other kinds of severe weather, for me, being able to go out and go through the exercise both of forecasting it for myself, but also being out there and experiencing the environment and seeing how the storms evolve, and being in these places with people who are close to being affected, I'm able to understand a little bit better some of the responses we get to things like surveys and when we do interviews, what the sense is and what people are thinking and why they respond the way they do, and some of the complexities in trying to make sense of those situations. I think it's humbled me and given me an appreciation for the nuance. And for most tornadoes, they really are actually quite small, and we warn a very large area. And so the milling process people go through to try to figure out where it is and if it's really going to impact them, I think makes a lot of sense when you start to see these storms. And sometimes they are actually progressing fairly slowly, and there are times where they are quite visible. What's really important to me, what's emerged for me, is messaging to people to not necessarily rely on those things that are instinctual when they're rain-wrapped storms, or maybe they are very large tornadoes. They wouldn't necessarily recognize what they look like because it looks just like a wall of rain. And so it's important to me to know the difference, the distinction among these things that maybe logically make sense to folks and don't. And I think that the same thing works for folks who go on to do severe weather forecasting. It's hard to issue a warning, I think, if you've never been out in the field and really seen what these things look like and corroborated the radar evidence to what you're seeing on the ground. I think there really is some value in that. So it can be quite educational for forecasters. So for folks who are working in a variety of different scientific applications, I do see some value. And I think Chuck would admit that too, though obviously what we see in some of the more rambunctious behaviors is more about the people and themselves. To me, it's really, is it about you? If you have a camera pointed to you, is it about you, or is it about trying to help someone other than yourself? That's a huge distinction that should be acknowledged.
Point.
Anything to add to that, Tim?
Well, yeah, Chuck is trying to make people think, and that isn't all too bad of an idea. Storm chasers got to think about why they're actually doing this. And is it just for the fun of it? Those people who go out there and say, well, I'm doing it for science, well, where are your published papers? I mean, if you're doing it for science, where are your instrumented probes? You have to, if you're doing it for science, there has to be somewhere that you're going to get that information out to somebody. So I think, well, what Kim said is exactly spot on. It's not about the storm so much for some of these people, it's about them. And I don't have cameras pointing at me when I'm out chasing. I'm pointing at the storm. I don't look very good on camera, right? So
not when the wind's blowing, Tim, do we?
No. So I just I don't have to know how I look on camera. All right, please. So yeah, it's about the storm, and I would rather have some nice video of a storm rather than of me acting out some emotion for all to see, which I don't do that.
So Tim, have you ever been thrust into that role of first responder after a storm?
Well, I have in a way, and this was in May 3 of '99. I am not a first responder in the sense that I don't know what to do to a person. I've taken CPR training, so I know how to do that, but it's totally different practicing on some plastic dummy on the floor when everybody's around you is talking, telling jokes, versus when you're out there in the real thing, when people are screaming and shouting and it's raining on you. And so I encountered a situation on May 3rd where people were screaming and they were running out of their houses. And I knew immediately that I didn't need to be there, that this was, they would be commandeering my vehicle and wanted me to rush people to the hospital, and that's fine and dandy. But I was getting myself in way over what I could handle. And it's the first responders who are right there. I mean, you could hear the sirens coming in. Like Jeff says, they're pretty quick, and they know what's going on, especially when they hear all these people calling in this report. Let them handle that. And they know, they're professionals. They handled this traumatic situation. I wouldn't do so well, and I would be actually in danger of hurting somebody. I don't know how to move somebody who's injured, and they do. So I want to get out of there, get the help that people need to them, because I'm not there to help them.
Jeff, anything to add to that?
No, I think Tim makes a really good point. I think there's a couple of times I've come across situations in real rural areas where there's maybe not a close emergency services close by. That might be 40, 50 miles from the closest place with an ambulance, and you're on the scene and you got blown into the street from the tornado. Sometimes you stop and you help them, you put them in a vehicle or whatever you can do. Sometimes you take them to the hospital, but those are extreme and very rare events today compared to, 20, 30 years ago. If you, I think you do what you can do. I think anybody can help save a life. And sometimes, after the jumping experience, it's not necessarily rushing people to the hospital. Just having somebody know that you're there to be with them while they're burying the rubble keeps people alive. I can tell you that for a fact after jumping. But again, those are extreme, very rare events. And thank goodness they don't happen very often. because those are extreme events. But yeah, you just stop and help when you can. But most times, call 911. Let the local officials respond. Let them. That's what they're trained for. I'm not a medic. I, know how to do CPR, but I'm not a medic, and you can't. And I can tell you, after Joplin and other cases, May 3rd, 99, and more, multiple times in El Reno, that you see things that are beyond, as the doctors tell me, when you start having over 700, 800 trauma one type injuries with people impaled in boards and stop signs and very horrific accident things that happen out here out in the field with tornadoes. Even the best of surgeons have told me it's all they can do to save them. So it's very complex, and it's let the people that are trained to deal with those kinds of situations. That's the people that need to be on the scene and help those people. That's the best we can do in a lot of cases. A lot of times, the best I've found out is just call 911. If we can get the first word out and say, this is my location, this is what's happened. I've got 50 homes been leveled. There's people trapped. I need rescue at this location. Put it as a priority. And here comes the cavalry. And that's basically what you need to do. That's what I do. And then I go on and get out of the area.
Hey, Tim, let me ask you a question as an engineer meteorologist. You're the best in the field. The EF scale, that rates the intensity of tornadoes based on the damage they cause. Do we need to change that?
Well, James, it's being changed as we speak. There is American Society of Civil Engineers. It's a long process.
Yeah, I know it is.
The American Society of Civil Engineers believes this is a very important issue, and they want to actually have a standard developed to how to interpret and use the EF scale. And so I'm on a committee to go ahead and revamp the EF scale, and it's going to be completely revamped. The wind speeds are going to be pretty much the same, but we're going to add a lot more DIs, a lot more descriptions. We're going to round some numbers to 5 miles an hour, because right now when we say that a building is destroyed at 161, we are saying that we're much more precise than the science dictates. So we don't want to say that is a precise number, because it's not. So we've debated about this. Well, hopefully in the year 2020 or 2021, there'll be a standard out which will have an entirely new take on the EF scale. It's still going to be a damage-based scale, but there will be at least some additional elements there of what happens if you get a mesonet reading, what happens if you get a Doppler on wheels reading, those kinds of things that are giving you point measurements of wind. Can you go ahead and incorporate those into the EF scale? And you can. And so there needs to be a way on how to do it and do it right. So it's going to take a while. The National Weather Service is on board with this, and they're working this out. So we're going to start coming out in 2020, 2021 with this standard that we hope the Weather Service will adopt fairly quickly. And this will be a universal standard. This will be not only for the United States, but will apply in Canada and Japan and Europe and other places if they so choose to want to adopt them. So we have to think about building types in Europe, which differ greatly than in the United States, especially for single family homes. Over there, they're double width masonry with solid gables and heavy timber roofs with slate or tile. Here, mostly wood framing or concrete block stucco. So there's a big difference in houses. And then, of course, we have to deal with the manufactured home dilemma, which is how do you go out and evaluate a manufactured home from a tornado, and what kind of wind speeds you're going to assign to it? Because there's a lot of debate about, well, should you stay in your home? Should you go in a vehicle? What should you do? So we need to have those answers in mass. And to give you an idea about this, there's like 90 people on this committee. So can you imagine trying to get 90 people to agree on anything? It's just like, it takes forever. So my subgroup, which I'm in charge of, is dealing with the existing DIs, with the damage indicators, which there's 28 of them. And we're going to combine some. We're going to actually delete some, because that's another group, like trees, for example. We're not even going to touch trees. We have arborists on board, who know a lot more on trees than I do. So they're going to deal with the tree issue. But we're going to go in and revamp those damage indicators. And I think everybody will be really pleased to see how much detail that there's going to be here. And we're going in now that we've had EF scale started. I guess ground swelling in 2001, and it was adopted by the National Weather Service in 2007. So we've had, 18 years of EF scale, and we have a whole lot of data points. I mean, the National Weather Service goes out, they do these surveys. We're combining all these surveys. So we're getting actually a lot of data from houses and barns, manufactured homes, all building types. So we need to incorporate this information. It's 18 years of it right now.
So will this still be 0 to 5 when this is finished, or what's going to be the net result here in terms of the scale?
Yes, the scale will be 0 to 5, and the wind speeds are the ranges are going to stay pretty much the same. There may be a little difference. The damage indicators, the wind speeds are going to be pretty much the same. There are going to be some 10 miles an hour up, 10 miles an hour down, something like that. Manufactured homes are going to come down in some areas, and depending on where you're at, because there's actually 3 HUD zones for manufactured homes, and then there is the modular home, which is actually falls under a building code, which is a higher stringent code than the HUD code. So you have to know what you're dealing with here, and you have to, of course, as Brian and I know, going out and looking at a lot of these, anchoring is the key on these manufactured homes. I mean, you can have the best built manufactured home around, but if you don't anchor it, it's just a rolling box as it goes down the hillside. So anchoring, we need to teach the people who are using this information what is good anchoring, what is not so good anchoring, how should it be done. So not only do we have to have this standard, but we have to go ahead and provide training to these people on how to do that. And I think that's there. I think we're going to have all this. It's a very complex process, take many, many years, but I think it's going to be better in the long run. I really do.
So is this going to be the EEF scale? I'm seeing in the chat room here.
Yeah, in fact, you could call it the EEF scale.
All right, I like it. All right, so Jeff, one quick question for you, and then let's take a break here.
Yeah.
You're the king of Periscope. I mean, you're good. When do you determine when you go live, and then when you're just recording and off the air? When do you decide when to hit that live button?
I think you have to value people's time. And I look at the analytics of the people that follow me. Okay, and when you look at the analytics that follow me, a lot of them are professionals. A lot of them are a lot of weather people, scientific people. And I think it's imperative that if you're going to do a broadcast, and especially if you're going to do a breaking type broadcast, whether it's a live broadcast, that you only start that broadcast right when something is happening, such as, don't people are not going to watch you drive around for 2 hours before an event. If you bring up the live Periscope, right before Hurricane Harvey, right when things are starting to get bad and the winds are getting high, debris starting to fly. Same thing in a tornado. I don't Periscope hours before an event, but once the severe storm or tornadic storm is starting to unfold and you've got significant situation, then I'll start the Periscope, and that is critical. And keeping followers to a short amount of time, because if you're going to interrupt their schedule, whether they're out shopping or whether they're golfing or whether they're at home with the kids, if you're going to interrupt somebody's schedule, you got to be cognizant of their time and be aware of that, and just only interrupt when it's something really big's happening. And that's why I do so well with Periscope. I'm very cognizant of my time and people's time as well, so I don't waste it. And I think that's important.
And you're pretty composed during these horrific situations, like Harvey. How do you keep your composure? I'm not that good.
Harvey was one of those deals where you have an intensifying hurricane. I've chased over 40 plus hurricanes, and I've done the big ones: Katrina, Harvey, Wilma, Andrew. After a while, it was very well forecasted. The Hurricane Center did an excellent job. We had the Hurricane Center; they had the hurricane planes out there. Emergency management. The key is talking to the local emergency management before the event, finding out what roads are going to flood, what buildings are going to come down. When we're out sightseeing in the sense of getting ready for the hurricane to make landfall, is what buildings are going to fail. Tim knows what I'm talking about. And you look at like structures, which ones are going to come off first, which way is the wind going to be direction as Hurricane Harvey came up from the south? Is it going to be out the northeast? If there's a building to my east, is it going to come into my location? Unfortunately, we had a satellite vortex in the eye wall hit the CVS about 50 yards east of me and exploded and came into the car wash. But I had multiple walls. I was on the far western side of the car wash. So if something started impaling the car wash, the roof started coming down. I had as many walls between me and the flying debris as possible. So these are all things you think about ahead of time to know where to take shelter. But I prefer a parking garage or an interior stairwell. But there wasn't that much of an offer chance to do that down at Rockport. It was limited places to hide and film, to be honest with you.
Well, your work is just stunning. And we got to take a break, but I got one more question for Tim. I could talk all night.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, site-built homes. If you could change construction techniques, what's the one thing you could change? Is it anchors? What needs to happen?
Well, James, it's not such an easy thing. I mean, we've got homes built on slabs. We have homes in your area. A lot of them are built on a pier and beam foundation. To me, we have to get back to slabs and anchor them down. Pier and beam is unanchored. I've seen too much tragedy in your part of the woods there where our houses just obliterated because they're not anchored down. So anchorage is always a key, really. It involves that. I've said this over and over, James. It goes back to the ABCs: anchors, braces, and connections. That's a little ditty I use a lot, but it's true. And that's what we have to do. Just get back to building them the way they should be built and not try to cut so many corners.
Hey James, can I ask Tim something real quick before we move on?
Go.
Tim, and you too, probably, Jeff, you were
I've
on
got a comment about this too. I built houses for many
good.
years. I agree with Tim 100%. I even go one step farther. I think all residential houses in the whole United States, I think you have to have an anchor strap coming out of the slab, concrete every 16 inches. It needs to go not only over to the sill plate, it needs to go up all the way to the exterior wall, over the top of the rafters, and you need to take the hurricane clips and tie the sill plate so it's all secure to the concrete, so it will not lift off the slab. That's the only way you're going to secure houses going forward. That's my thought.
And Tim, what do you do about garages?
Well, garage doors don't fare so well. I mean, they're a sail. They catch the wind. They allow wind to get in, and then you have an internal pressure buildup that then adds additional uplift on the roof. So you lose the roof of your house. And once you lose the roof of your house, then the walls around your house are no longer supported at the top, and they fall in or out. So, we have to stop the wind from getting in. We can't get away from not having attached garages. People want an attached garage, especially the further north you go. You want to go from your vehicle into your house without having to go outside. So, that's a tough issue, just making garage doors stronger, maybe having a firewall between your garage and your house extend all the way up so that if the garage does blow apart, it won't blow apart your house as well. It doesn't share the common roof system. So just a little change like that could probably help a great deal.
Well, I'm putting my house on the market tomorrow. Thank you for that. One last question for Tim and Jeff. You both were on the Texas coast for Harvey, and I watched in amazement from Beeville because I was babysitting a hotel. As I think it was the Fairfield Inn in Rockport, is that right? That took a really hard hit. What was what could have been done in that construction, or should have been done in that construction, from what you could tell, that would have helped protect that building?
To me, it looked like a balloon frame wall, so it just peeled off the side of that. It obviously was a connection problem there. Those buildings should be built better than what happened down there. As Jeff said, the Rockport area afforded no real protection. There was a lot of flying debris. I had to get out of there because I just did not feel safe there. There's just too much stuff flying around. So I actually rode the eye wall back to Refugio, and that was very, very much like being in a car wash the whole time. 0 visibility. It was just inching along. I don't recommend riding it out of your vehicle, but I did it at the time, and it was at least I survived it. So I wouldn't want to do that again.
Mhm.
But the buildings, some of them that are built very well, did very well.
Mhm.
Other buildings that were built long ago, I guess it's Mother Nature's way of weeding out the old, right? Taking those old buildings out while the newer ones stay. But yet the motel you're talking about wasn't that old. So,
Mhm.
It's fairly new.
yeah, it goes back to this. Mother Nature is going to exploit any weakness in a building, regardless if it's new or old. So, if a wall's not connected properly, yeah, it's going to tear it off. So, chasers have got to be kind of concerned about this because they think, okay, I want to go to, I don't want to be in my car when I'm riding out a hurricane. I want to be in a hotel. Well, you got to pick and choose wisely.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break here. And while Aubrey happens to be standing by, we just maybe, have a little email this week.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
All right, there I am. Hi, guys. Sorry I missed out on all the fun. Stupid TV. All right, so this one comes in from Ashley Ross, who just listened to episode 633. No, we are not the only weather podcast, and she heard us mention that we needed more people from California. So her and her coworker live near Fresno after he told her about the podcast, and they have been listening. So they use weather data to help them forecast what the air quality would do the next day for the Central Valley in California. So that's very interesting. So thank you very much for that. And episode 632, WeatherBrains After Dark, learned a lot about the GOES satellite. So thanks for sending us that note, Ashley. We appreciate it. And thanks for listening and still watching us. And then Tarmo, our friend Tarmo, also sent us an email and says, I hope Span is wearing the hat today. I might be the only native in this country that knows what it is thanks to years of WeatherBrains listening and watching. Thought I'd bring up an update on Dennis Mercereau, who appeared on WeatherBrains in 2016 and who used to write the Vane blog on Gawker until he was laid off. He is now going to, he's starting on his own and has started a crowdfunding campaign. His new blog is damweather.com. Very cool. And thank you very much for Tarmo. Other than that, they're having a thaw there in Estonia.
Damn, DAM,
yes.
Not damn with the extra letter.
No, it's the damn I can say.
His Twitter handle is WXDAM.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
yeah.
Just making sure.
The one we can say, not the one we can't say. The weather is expected to cool down in the coming days, but nothing extreme. And that is our forecast update from Estonia. So thank you very much for that, Tarmo. If you have an email you'd like to send us, email at weatherbrains.com. You can also find us on the Facebook and the Twitter. Email at weatherbrains.com.
Nate, you got some breaking news here? Do I need to roll the breaking news intro here? I can do that if we need to.
We interrupt this program for a CBS Radio Net Alert Bulletin.
A lot of folks on the program who watch, who are faithful folks, enjoy looking at model data on tropicaltidbits.com. And they have, Levi has just put out just a few minutes ago that you can do vertical cross sections for all models and all regions, and you can pick your endpoints of your cross section. This is really good stuff. I would have killed to have this stuff when I was in college. So for those of you, if you are looking at model data and you know what you're doing when you're looking at model data, you can look at these cross sections, and that can tell you a little bit more about what the model might be thinking on a given day. It's good stuff.
It's great.
What you got there, Jeff?
It's what Nate's talking about. It's Levi's new cross section of the storm from point A to point B, and it looks beautiful. It's awesome. Another great job for Levi. Beautiful looking stuff.
Tropical Tidbits. That's a great site. We're going to roll a couple of quick hits. I know it's getting late here. If y'all can hang on for just a few more minutes, we're going to roll Professor Peters and Tony Rice. And coming out of that, Bill, I'm going to let you pick it up because I have to do some television. So we'll take a break for Professor Peters, Tony Rice, and the Astronomy Report. We'll come back with the Weather Roundup, picks of the week, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
I hate to interrupt the multi-part series on air masses, but I thought it best to note the launch of GOES on March the 1st. NASA successfully launched the second in a series of next-generation weather satellites for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, at 5:02 p.m. Eastern Time on March the 1st, 2018. NOAA's Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite-S, or GOES-S, lifted off from Space Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida aboard a United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket. GOES-S mission managers confirmed at 8:58 p.m. that the spacecraft's solar arrays successfully deployed and the spacecraft was operating on its own power. The satellite will provide faster, more accurate, and more detailed data in near real time to track storm systems, lightning, wildfires, coastal fog, and other hazards that affect the western United States. Once GOES-S is positioned in a circular orbit approximately 22,300 miles above the Earth, in about 2 weeks, it will be named GOES-17. A satellite in geosynchronous orbit is in a sort of sweet spot in which the satellite orbits at the same speed that the Earth rotates. A geostationary orbit is extremely valuable for weather monitoring because satellites in this orbit provide a constant view of the same surface area. When you see satellite imagery on a weather website or on television, you are most likely seeing imagery from a satellite in geostationary orbit. GOES-S is another step forward in better, more detailed observation of our amazing weather systems. If you have a question about the weather, drop an email to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
You may have heard that Benjamin Franklin invented the concept of daylight saving in an attempt to conserve candles. In reality, though, daylight saving is neither an American invention nor a recent one. It also tends to be brought up by those furthest from the equator. The concept dates back to a New Zealand entomologist who proposed a not 1 but 2 hour shift in time to enable him to do more bug hunting after work. The idea didn't catch hold until 2 years into World War I, when Germany enacted it as an energy-saving measure. Other countries followed suit. But what is all this saving of daylight trying to accomplish? Some argue energy savings, but Arizona abandoned the practice when the additional daylight evening hours meant higher energy usage in that air conditioning dependent state. Others argue the economic benefit, and studies do support this. A recent JP Morgan study found that credit card spending in Los Angeles decreased by an average of 3.5% following the end of daylight saving, while things stayed pretty flat in Phoenix where the clocks don't change. Daylight saving opponents point to the fact that only about a third of the world's countries observe it. Those countries tend to be closer to the equator or geographically isolated from other countries that do observe the practice. This isn't a black and white issue, though. At its core, daylight savings is an attempt to synchronize our unchanging clock to the increasing and decreasing cycle of time the sun is above the horizon. This is a function of latitude, though. The benefits wane and inconveniences grow here in the United States as you move from northern states to southern ones. This is probably not as noticeable, though, because we change our clocks at a point in the year where daylight differences across the country are at their lowest. Case in point, today, March 12th, Miami will see 11 hours and 55 minutes of sun. Birmingham, Alabama, 11 hours and 51 minutes. Bangor, Maine, 11 hours and 44 minutes. Not that different. By June, though, Miami's day increases by only about 45 minutes, while Birmingham's 2.5 hours and Bangor's goes up by 3.5 hours. So what's the solution? I don't have it, but I think that whatever optimal solution lies out there should take latitude into account. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
Well, thank you, Tony Rice, for the astronomy report. I thought James might leave the jingle in there for the weather roundup, but apparently technology hasn't advanced to that point. Jeff Piotrowski, I was just down in your neck of the woods a week or so ago. What's the weather like where you are?
You know, it was chilly. We're going to have a freeze, a couple more freezes next couple mornings in northeast Oklahoma, low near 30, 35, highs in the 50s. And then by Thursday, Friday, we're back in the 70s and even 83 by Friday. So it warms up rapidly, but Mother Nature's got a few more little curveballs it's going to throw at us. And I think a couple more freezes are on the way and a little bit of severe weather possible, over the weekend. And we'll see how that goes next week. And it doesn't look too bad, but spring's soon going to be here for everybody, I hope. Tired of the cold weather.
Yeah, me too. I'm ready for it to get here. And this looks a lot like March 1932, a year I've looked at a lot. We had a big tornado outbreak in Alabama on the 21st, but we had a lot of topsy-turvy temperatures right before that, and I worry that we could have something like that. Tim Marshall, any thoughts on the upcoming severe weather season?
I don't have a crystal ball. Sorry, folks. One good chase day can make a season. So, I'll just see what happens.
So you're down there in Southwest Florida. So you gave us a little preview of the weather a few minutes ago. What will the weather be like for you the rest of this week as you work through all your damage assessments and evaluations, Tim?
The weather's going to be beautiful down here this week. It's going to be mild temps, lower humidities, all because of that frontal system. So we're going to really enjoy working outdoors for the rest of the week. And then as things get into the weekend, it'll start heating up again, of course, and the humidity will pick up. It'll be back to hot Florida weather.
That's amazing. What's your next trip out, Nate? Where do you have to go? What part of the country is going to be up for you next?
New York next week, looks like. And after that, National Hurricane Conference here toward the end of the month. And then April has a couple of trips going, running up the frequent flyer miles and visiting stations and meeting people. It's been fun. It really has been great to meet so many of my new colleagues and to see what they're up to, and still have a lot more to go.
Yeah, that's an exciting job, that's for sure. So looking forward to hearing more reports about what you're up to. Brian Peters, this is an important anniversary for us here in Alabama, much of the eastern United States. 25 years ago tonight, we were experiencing thunder snow.
Absolutely.
So you shared some of your thoughts on a video today of your memories. Talk about a couple of the more memorable things that you took away from the March 1993 superstorm.
Oh gosh, there's so many, Bill. Trying to write them all down. One of the things I took away has nothing to do with the weather exactly, but it was how much people came together to beat Mother Nature and the snow with things like nurses getting transportation from people who had four-wheel drive vehicles, and people who needed insulin and couldn't get out of their homes, but people with four-wheel drive vehicles could get the insulin to them. Just lots of human interest stories like that. That's one of the takeaways. And I also found out that 2 shifts of forecasters can go through a lot of food in 12 hours too.
and that's when the Weather Service in Birmingham was out on West Oxmoor Road, huh?
Yes,
back in those days. So you were the WCM then, Brian? Was that?
No, I was the deputy meteorologist in charge.
Gotcha. So
I got a phone call on Saturday the 13th saying that everything was going well. The emergency generator was working fine, but there was one small problem. They'd run out of food. And it was like, wow, because they were still going to be at least 36 hours before there was going to be enough of the improvement in transportation that we could get new shift workers in to cover those so they could go home. And so I made a trip that normally takes about 25 minutes and made a trip with about $40 worth of food. And it took 2.5 hours to get there. And it's amazing with some of the conditions I encountered, like places where roads were covered with 6 to 8 feet of drifted snow. It's kind of amazing I made it, but I did. Thank goodness to four-wheel drive.
Well, that event quickly changed from what was going to be a fun snow event to a life-threatening one, because I remember waking up on Saturday morning and the house across the street, the entire first floor was covered by a drift of snow.
Yeah.
And this is Birmingham, Alabama. I mean, right. And I really looked out the window and thought God had ended the world with snow.
The Weather Service, I think, I think forecasts in general did a really good job on that event. What I think is interesting is the National Weather Service forecast, as I recall, started with snow 2 to 4 inches, accumulation. And finally, at some point Friday evening, they just went to more than 8 and just left it at that.
And that wasn't
and that wasn't really that good.
Yeah, I have J.B. Elliott's in some things Judy gave me after he passed away, and one of the sheaves is of all of the forecasts and all of the warnings from that event.
Wow.
And it was extremely well done. I mean, given the state of things in 1993,
yes,
we were watching dot matrix, model data come across, on a printer in the weather office, and seeing a hurricane strength low in the Gulf of Mexico with below freezing temperatures all the way to the Gulf Coast, and realizing it was going to be big. But my boss, it was interesting because I had a good 5-day lead on this, and alerting businesses that they needed to prepare when it was 75 degrees, on that day for a foot of snow was, like they didn't want to take you very seriously.
Yeah. Well, and I really like the copy of the statement, the special weather statement. I think I had a hand in that statement that at 1:45 p.m. because it had broken out with some sunshine, not a lot of sun.
Exactly.
We had some rain showers. We also had some snow showers. And, the phones all afternoon at the National Weather Service were just ringing off the wall with, well, I guess you guys really blew this one, didn't you? And so we actually put out a special weather statement. And as I recall, I helped the lead forecaster kind of put that together. And, trying to tell people, no, this is not the main event. The main event is yet to come. So.
And
interesting.
Boy, did it ever. So,
yep.
So, Aubrey, can you talk, or are you muted back there?
I can talk.
Okay, Aubrey. Anything to add to the weather roundup, or do you want to start?
I did a little piece about the blizzard of '93 here in the Shenandoah Valley. Snow ranged from about 16 to a little over 20 inches, and of course, our mountains in West Virginia picked up 30 to 45 inches of snow. So that was, and you know what? It actually wasn't even it's not even on the top 5 for big snows in this area. So while it was huge, in the south and huge in the Northeast. For the Shenandoah Valley, it's not exactly even on our top 5. So, very interesting.
We often forget that there was a serious storm surge in the Florida Big Bend area, and tornadoes in the derecho across.
And that's kind of what I learned actually putting that piece together, that there was a derecho, and because we went through the 2012 derecho here, I did include it in my on-air presentation because I knew people here actually knew what it was. But yeah, there's some good stuff on YouTube, and of course James and Kevin's old videos. If you want to check those out, that's good stuff.
It was priceless. Aubrey, start us off with the pick of the week.
Yeah, my pick of the week is from NOAA. It's actually a piece on YouTube from their 20th anniversary. So from 5 years ago, some satellite imagery. And I was looking at the description and it says GOES 7. To think about that. GOES 7 using visible and infrared data and talking about the dates and stuff like that. So really cool visualization.
That's incredible. Well, thank you for that, Aubrey. Brian Peters, you got a pick of the week?
Yes. As a matter of fact, you kind of took away my thunder there, Bill, because I'm going to pick my video of the memories of
That's a great pick.
1993.
We had a series of those on our blog today. My memories, James's memories, and Scott Martin on our team. He shared his, and I went back and found one that JB had pinned on the blog back in 2007. So I pulled it out and dusted it off and put it up there, and it was nice to see JB's thumbprint on the blog again today. And I'm
Absolutely.
sure now he had retired by that time, hadn't he, Brian?
Oh yes, yeah.
So
he retired in '89. So yes.
And so he was working on the private side. Jeff Piotrowski, anything you want to add to the show tonight, and maybe a pick of the week?
Yeah, pick of the week. I'd say this is the most breaking kind of breaking weather, but it's not in the U.S. It's overseas in Italy. Earlier this evening they had a significant tornado over Caserta, Campana in South Italy, and it reported 15 people injured and considerable damage has been reported, and the pictures are starting to flood in now over in Europe. But they had a significant tornado night in South Italy with lots of damage, and I did retweet that in the last hour, so you'll follow that. You'll see the video, nighttime video, as well as the damage. It's quite extensive. It's a significant stovepipe tornado. Looks like it was probably in the EF2 to EF3 scale, pretty big.
So we might be seeing a Periscope from Italy from you sometime soon.
I don't know. Maybe Tim and I need to go over there and do some damage survey. What do you think, Tim?
Absolutely. I'll be on the next plane, Jeff.
Yes, I'm thinking some Italian with a bottle of red wine would be just about perfect.
I'm hearing a little Billy Joel singing from an Italian restaurant in my ear here. So what kind of damage indicators would you expect to find in some 17th century buildings, Tim?
Oh, they're going to be pretty old, obviously. And wood rot is one of the big problems. Termites are another problem. Yeah, there could be some serious problems with older buildings. But saying that, if they're masonry buildings, they seem to do quite well with age. It's just a big, heavy building. Heavy buildings do better.
Yeah, it's not easy to roll those down a hill, that's for sure. So, Kim Cloco McLean. You can't even spell it wrong since I at least halfway pronounced it right. So, anything to add to this outstanding discussion tonight, and maybe a pick of the week from you?
Yeah. Actually, just to Tim, to the point you just made, it's really interesting that masonry does well in tornadoes, because what it doesn't do very well in Italy is earthquakes. Unfortunately, unreinforced stone masonry. So it's actually kind of heartening to hear there is something that it does well for those people. But my pick of the week, as we were going to have this great panel assembled of storm chasers, it made me think of Chuck Doswell, beloved friend of the crew here, and his blog, where he's written many essays. And the one I wanted to highlight tonight was a topic that I've brought up a couple times in the last couple of weeks as we head into storm season, something important for folks to be thinking about with their communities and messaging. It's about how there are not really hyper-localized tornado hotspots and safe zones, though there are many places where people do feel that this is the case. Chuck wrote what I think is the most well stated, the most sort of eloquent but also simple argument I've seen to describe why this is the case, and to make a case for what randomness should really look like over space. I really love, in particular, his figure where he says if you were to throw dice down on a board and see what, over 1,000 times, and see what where they'd all land, they're not going to be perfectly gridded. There will be little clusters that emerge just naturally, and that's what chaos looks like. So some food for thought from Chuck.
So Kim, you've got two schools in the NCAA basketball tournament, don't you?
I do. Yeah, so I have Purdue. I've been very excited watching my alma mater, Purdue, doing really, really well. And Oklahoma made its way in. And I know that one was a little bit more controversial. There's been some conversation today about whether that ought to have been the case. But I guess you just can't turn down the tray. I think that's really what it came down to. So I'll cheer for them, and we'll see how far they get.
That's outstanding. Well, thank you for that, Kim. Nate, good to have you on the show regularly again. Nice to have you back.
Good to be here.
So do you have a pick of the week for us? Anything else to add to this discussion tonight?
I do. Not to add to the discussion, I don't know that I can top Jeff Petrowski and Tim Marshall swapping chase stories. Are you kidding? This is gold.
Nate, you need to come with me and Tim out chasing. You have not done that yet.
I do.
That's a throwdown. That's a throwdown, buddy. Okay,
all right.
I'm throwing the challenge at you.
All right.
Borrow one of the Storm Rangers and take it with you.
Nate Johnson right now.
I'll have to come down. I'll have to spend the next couple of months getting my gut ready for the awesome burritos.
For those awesome burritos, that'll be what you have to get your
I'm
gut
thinking
ready
Memorial
for.
Day weekend is what I'm thinking.
There you go. Pick of the week. So last week, big nor'easter. We had thunder snow, and a lot of it over Manhattan and some other places in New England. And Ryan Hanrahan, the chief meteorologist at NBC Connecticut, wrote up some thoughts about all of that, but also pulled from a thread of tweets talking about depolarization streaks in dual pole radar data, what's actually causing that, and why it can be a precursor to thunder snow in certain circumstances. It was one of these threads on Twitter that was mind-blowing for a couple of different reasons. Number one, you've got like some really smart people in really focused areas talking about something that I had seen but didn't really know a lot about. And so I learned something about the atmosphere, and we're doing this on Twitter. It was like Twitter school. It was great. And Ryan did a really nice job, I think, summarizing the science of it. So if you've ever seen streaky dual pole data, either in correlation coefficient or especially differential reflectivity, ZDR, and want to know what's that all about and how it can lead to thunder snow, you want to check out my pick of the week.
That could be very helpful in the future. Thank you, Nate, for sharing that. I'm going to take the foghorn tonight since James is not here to blow it on me. So I have to make the sound effect, but I am excited. Tonight's show, of course, is an offshoot of National Weather Podcast Month, which we had a lot of our associates on last week from the various different weather podcasts that are out there now. We may not be the best weather podcast, but we're certainly the oldest weather podcast here at WeatherBrains. So we have at least that claim to fame. But next week we'll have Chuck Doswell unplugged, I hear. So that's going to be.
Is he ever not unplugged?
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of a redundant title. But in any case, Chuck will be our guest next week, and that'll be a lot of fun. At least the guy in the TV station booth with the buzzer will have his hands full trying to work the delay. Next Monday night, we're excited about that. We'll be talking about one of our favorite subjects, weather folklore, with Canadian meteorologist Cindy Day on the last Monday of the month. But with that having been said, another Weather Brains show is in the can and heading out into the wild here shortly. Weather Brains is the weekly netcast. It's all about weather. We usually do it on Monday nights here. We've been doing it for a long time. In our 13th year now, 12 years in the bag. We love it tonight, of course. And I get to say this often, but tonight I really do mean it. One of my favorite shows. That hour went by faster than anything I've ever seen. But tell your friends about us and tell them to get Weather Brains wherever they consume their local podcasts from. But until next week, when Chuck Doswell will be our guest here on the show, hope you have a great week and God bless. All right. Tim, thank you for staying up late. Jeff, thank you so much for all the props.
Thanks,
tonight.
Bill.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Jeff, thank Tim.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Congrats,
Thank you, everybody.
Tim.
Bye, Jeff.
Yeah,
Bye-bye. Bye-bye,
congratulations,
Tim.
Good night, James.
Good night.
And there's 25 people still watching. Wow. All right, guys. Thank you all for watching. I got to scoot back in there and finish the weather segment. Join us on Song of the Night if you want to. Follow me on the Twitter. My last name, Span. And we'll open that up here in a few minutes, and we'll talk more about weather stuff. But great show tonight. Tim Marshall, Jeff Petrowski. What a great show. Can't wait to listen to it driving down the road tomorrow. We'll see you guys next week, next Monday night. You'll have a great weekend. God bless. Bye-bye.